Nathan Caldwell had signed the order that could take Claire Bennett's parents home, but the secret beneath his signature was far worse than foreclosure. By the following afternoon, Claire would be trapped inside his armored sport utility vehicle in a deserted parking garage, watching white fire suppression mist drift through the vents while Nathan stood 20 feet away with an emergency remote in his hand. Her phone showed 3% battery. The electronic security locks refused to release. Through the reinforced glass, she saw the billionaire chief executive officer look toward her with an expression she could not read. "I trusted you," Claire shouted over the alarm. Nathan pressed the remote. A white emergency strobe filled the garage, and Claire's world disappeared behind the light. The night before, Claire still believed loyalty could protect a family. She reached her parents' brick row house in Port Richmond at 11:40 in the afternoon, tired from a 13-hour shift at Caldwell Urban Holdings. Her job was to find financial risk before it became public disaster, and that day she had reviewed forecasts for a $640 million logistics project along the Delaware River. The numbers had bothered her. Now she knew why. Her mother, Susan, stood beside the kitchen counter holding a coffee mug with both hands. Her father, Robert, sat at the table beneath a weak yellow light. Between them rested a white envelope bearing the logo of a property acquisition company Claire recognized. 3 cardboard boxes waited against the wall. One held tax records, another held family photographs, and the last contained Robert's old work boots, untouched since a warehouse collapse 12 years earlier left him with permanent back pain. Claire set down her purse. "Why are you packing?" Susan looked at Robert, but he did not answer. Claire opened the envelope. The notice stated that the Bennett property had been selected for acquisition under a city redevelopment agreement. Her parents had 10 business days to accept $86,000 or begin an appeal that could cost more than their savings. Claire read the amount again. Houses on the same block had recently sold for more than $300,000. Caldwell Urban Holdings was listed at the bottom. Her employer. "This valuation is wrong," Claire said. Robert stared at the table. "It is not wrong," he replied. "It is deliberate." The room seemed to tighten around her. Claire worked with valuation models every day. Someone had reduced the neighborhood score, lowered the projected resale value, and inflated repair costs. It was not an estimate. It was a message telling her parents they had no power. "Did anyone inspect the house?" Susan shook her head. Robert said, "Let it go." Before the accident, her father had been the loudest person in every room. He sang old rock songs while fixing the sink and argued with Phillies announcers as if they could hear him. Since losing his job, he had become quieter, but she had never heard fear so clearly in his voice. "They are trying to take the house you bought 23 years ago," Claire said. "The house you refinanced to help me finish college. Why would I let it go?" Robert pushed back his chair. "Because you work for those people. You should know what happens when families like ours challenge people like Nathan Caldwell." Claire went still. "I never said his name." Susan lowered her mug. Robert looked toward the hallway. Claire folded the notice slowly. "How do you know Nathan?" "I know what his company does." "That is not what I asked." "Claire," Susan said softly, "not tonight." The careful tone made Claire certain that both of them were hiding something. Robert stood, using the table for support. "Stay away from Caldwell. He signs my paycheck. Then find another job. You want me to abandon 4 years of work without telling me why?" Robert turned away. His elbow caught the open drawer of the sideboard, and an old photograph slipped from beneath a stack of utility bills. It landed near Claire's shoes. Robert moved toward it, but Claire picked it up first. 3 younger men stood outside Franklin Freight Depot, the warehouse that later collapsed. One was Robert, smiling in a reflective vest. Beside him stood Nathan Caldwell, younger and without his polished corporate expression. The third man was Grant Mercer, now Caldwell Urban's executive vice president and Nathan's most trusted public partner. Claire turned the picture over. 7 words were written in blue ink: "Nathan warned us." Grant made sure nobody listened. She looked at her father. His face had lost all color. "What did Nathan warn you about?" Robert reached for the photograph. Claire stepped back. "Was it the warehouse?" Susan closed her eyes. Robert said nothing. His silence carried more weight than a confession. Claire pulled out her phone and found Nathan Caldwell's private number in the emergency executive directory. It was reserved for serious corporate threats. Tonight, the threat was coming from inside his company. She called. 4 rings passed before voicemail answered. Claire kept her voice controlled because anger had made it dangerously steady. "Mr. Caldwell, this is Claire Bennett from Risk Analysis. Your company sent my parents an acquisition notice based on a valuation that appears intentionally manipulated. I also found a photograph connecting you, my father, and Grant Mercer to Franklin Freight Depot. You have 10 minutes to call me back. After that, I contact the press." She ended the call. Robert stared at her as though she had opened a door he had spent 12 years holding shut. "You do not understand what you just did," he whispered. Claire's phone rang less than 30 seconds later. Nathan did not introduce himself. His voice was quiet and precise. "Do not let your father know you found that photograph." Claire kept the phone pressed to her ear while Nathan Caldwell repeated the warning in a voice so controlled that it made the words feel more dangerous. "Do not let your father know you found that photograph." Robert stood only a few feet away, watching her face. Claire turned toward the kitchen window. "He is standing right here." Nathan paused. "Then tell him I called about the acquisition notice. Leave through the back door in 5 minutes. A car will be waiting at the corner." Claire looked at the white notice on the table. "Your company is trying to take my parents home, and now you want me to leave them in the middle of the night?" The notice was not supposed to exist. "That does not make it better." "No," Nathan said. "It makes it more urgent." Robert moved closer. "Put him on speaker." Nathan heard him. "Claire, do not do that." She ended the call. Robert stared at the dark screen. "You are not going anywhere." Claire slipped the photograph into her coat pocket. "You had 12 years to tell me what happened at Franklin Freight Depot. Some things are safer when they stay buried." "Safe for whom?" Susan set down her mug. "Your father believes he is protecting you. From Nathan Caldwell or from the truth?" Neither parent answered. Claire had spent years believing proximity to power could protect her family. Now that power was reaching for their home. "I am going to the office," she said. "It is almost midnight," Susan replied. "Then there will be fewer people there to lie to me." A black sedan waited beneath a streetlight. The driver introduced himself as Elias Reed, head of executive security for Caldwell Urban Holdings. Less than 15 minutes later, Elias escorted her through a private elevator into Nathan's office high above Market Street. On his desk lay a copy of the acquisition notice. "Did you approve it?" Claire asked. "I approved a redevelopment plan involving more than 300 properties. My parents' house is one of them. It was not supposed to be." Claire placed the photograph on his desk. "What did you warn my father about?" Nathan looked at the image without touching it. He removed a small brass key from a locked cabinet. 12 years ago, I was chief financial officer of the company that owned Franklin Freight Depot. An engineer reported serious structural problems and recommended closing the building until repairs were completed. Then why was my father still working there 3 days later? Nathan placed the key on the desk. Because the report disappeared before the operations committee met. Who had access? Grant Mercer controlled operations, maintenance budgets, and the outside inspection firm. Grant was now the second most powerful executive in the company and the public face of a redevelopment project valued at $640 million. Are you accusing your own partner? I am telling you that Grant knew the building was unsafe. And you did nothing? I went to the site. I warned Robert directly, and I promised to support an emergency shutdown despite the cost. But it stayed open. Your father refused to suspend the night shift. Claire felt the accusation strike deeper than expected. Why would he do that? Because Grant told him the workforce would lose health coverage if the schedule slipped again. Nathan pushed the key toward her. There is a safe deposit box at Liberty Federal Bank. It contains copies of the original report, settlement records, and an audio file made before the collapse. The box is held through an outside legal trust. Elias will accompany you, and the bank already has authorization allowing you to examine the contents. Why hide evidence in a bank? Because every official copy inside the company was altered. One attorney withdrew, another joined a firm connected to Grant, and the original investigator retired early. Claire did not touch the key. You expect me to believe you were the only honest man in the building? No. I expect you to discover that I was not honest enough. The admission unsettled her. Nathan opened a file showing the acquisition model for her parents' property. The market value had been changed from $312,000 to $86,000 at 9:18 that evening. The adjustment came from an executive account registered to Nathan. That is your account, Claire said. Yes. Then you changed it. I was at a board dinner when the change was made. Nathan explained that the account required a physical security token stored in his office. The token had disappeared for 19 minutes, then returned. The notice might not have been Nathan's attack. It might have been a message to him, delivered through her family. Why my parents? She asked. Because someone knows you work in risk analysis and knows Robert kept something from Franklin. Nathan closed the file. The board meets tomorrow at 4:30 in the afternoon. I can suspend the redevelopment for 72 hours, but only while I remain chief executive officer. Grant is trying to remove me before the vote. Claire picked up the key. And if I find proof against you? Then you should use it. Liberty Federal Bank opened at 8:30 the next morning. Elias completed the trust authorization at the security desk, then waited in the lobby while Claire entered a private viewing room and unlocked the safe deposit box. Inside were engineering reports, canceled checks, and a small digital recorder sealed in an envelope. She pressed play. Static filled the room, followed by Nathan's younger voice. Keep the night shift inside. We cannot afford another delay. Claire stopped the recording. The man who had denied ordering her father to work had just given the order himself. Before she could play it again, her phone rang. Grant Mercer's name appeared on the screen. Miss Bennett, he said warmly, before you believe Nathan's version of the past, you should know he has spent 12 years preparing to blame me for what he did. Claire kept the recorder on the table as Grant Mercer continued speaking with the polished concern of a man who had practiced sounding trustworthy. Nathan did not give you that box to reveal the truth, he said. He gave it to you so you would discover only the version he prepared. Claire looked at the engineering report spread across the private viewing room. How do you know what is inside? Grant paused for half a second. Because I helped collect them after the Franklin collapse. Grant claimed Nathan had been pressured by his father to avoid another costly delay, ordered the warehouse to remain open, and later blamed the operations team. The recording you heard is real, Grant said. Do not let him persuade you otherwise. Claire stared at the small device. The recording began too suddenly, as though its opening had been removed. Why are you calling me now? She asked. Because your family has already paid for his ambition once. I will not stand by while he uses you to hide it again. Grant offered to have an independent legal team review the records. He sent Claire a link to the encrypted whistleblower portal of a Philadelphia law firm. Its public listing appeared legitimate, but one consulting affiliate secretly answered to Grant. You control company attorneys too, Claire said. Not the team I am offering. And what do you want in return? Nothing. Preserve the evidence. Protect your parents. Then decide whom you believe. The offer sounded reasonable because it used the exact language Claire wanted to hear. Claire uploaded photographs of the reports and a copy of the audio file to the portal. She kept the original documents inside the safe deposit box and locked it before leaving the room. Nathan was waiting outside the bank beside the black sedan. "You spoke to Grant," he said. "Did you send him to watch the bank?" "I did not tell him you were here." Claire held up the recorder. "I heard your order." Nathan opened a laptop on the roof of the sedan and asked her to play the file. The sentence sounded again. "Keep the night shift inside. We cannot afford another delay." He enlarged a discontinuity in the waveform. This is not a final forensic conclusion, but it suggests several seconds were removed. The original statement began, "If the independent inspection clears the building." Claire saw the break but did not know whether to trust his explanation. "You could have created this explanation years ago. Then ask an expert who does not work for me." "I intend to." Nathan closed the laptop. "Tell me you did not send those files to Grant." Claire did not answer. "That account was created through a consulting firm connected to him. Anything you transmitted can now be used to prove you removed confidential settlement data." He said he was protecting the evidence. Grant protects leverage. Claire's phone vibrated before she could respond. Her employee access had been suspended. A message from Human Resources ordered her to report immediately to the 42nd floor of Caldwell Tower. Nathan looked at the screen and understood. "Do not sign anything," he said. "You no longer get to give me instructions. Claire, this is not about your employment anymore." "It was never only about my employment." She walked away before he could stop her. Grant waited in a conference room with 2 corporate attorneys and a human resources representative. "I am sorry this became necessary." One attorney stated that confidential company settlement records had been copied and transmitted to an outside account. Until the company completed its investigation, Claire was suspended without pay. "Grant gave me that account," she said. The attorney looked at him. Grant performed surprise. "I advised Miss Bennett to preserve relevant material. I did not instruct her to distribute protected files." Claire understood the trap. He had given her enough truth to gain her trust, then turned her decision into evidence against her. A termination agreement and confidentiality form were placed before her. The company would avoid referring the matter to federal investigators if she signed immediately and surrendered every copy. "You said Nathan was trying to blame you," Claire told Grant. "He is," Grant replied softly. "I am trying to prevent him from taking you down with him. By destroying my credibility before I can speak." His smile faded. "By reminding you that your parents cannot survive an expensive legal battle." Claire pushed the papers back without signing. 2 agents from a federal public corruption task force were already interviewing Caldwell employees about shell companies tied to the redevelopment. After the company reported Claire's transmission, they asked whether she had accessed Franklin records. Claire said she would speak only with an attorney present. Outside, she called Nathan, but the call went directly to voicemail. Robert did not answer either. Susan finally picked up, her breathing uneven. Robert had received a message that morning from someone claiming to know where the missing settlement money had gone. He left without saying where he was meeting them. His truck remained behind the bakery. Claire hurried home and found Susan at the kitchen table with Robert's old work jacket folded in front of her. "Your father was not only a victim," Susan said. Years earlier, Grant had asked Robert to carry sealed accounting records between Franklin and an outside firm. Robert believed the transfers were routine until he recognized the same company names on injured workers' settlement statements. When he questioned Grant, he was reminded that the family depended on company health insurance and that Claire's college assistance could disappear. Robert kept delivering the records. After the collapse, he signed a statement saying the building had passed an internal safety review. Nathan later discovered what Robert had done and offered to help him testify. Robert refused because he believed the truth would cost his family everything. Her father had been pressured, but he had also chosen silence. Nathan had concealed evidence, perhaps to protect Robert. Grant had told Claire enough truth to turn her into a weapon. Her phone vibrated. A video message from an unknown number showed Robert seated inside the abandoned Franklin office, tired but unharmed. A clock behind him read 10:47 in the morning. A message appeared beneath the image. Bring the original Franklin files to the warehouse by 5 o'clock. Come alone, or your father's confession becomes the only truth the world ever hears. Claire called Nathan Caldwell because the man she trusted least had become the only person with enough power to help her reach her father. Nathan answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" he asked. "My parents' house." "Is Susan with you?" "Yes." "Send me the video and do not leave." It was 11:18 in the morning, leaving less than 6 hours before the deadline. "They told me to come alone. They want to isolate you. Grant believes you can retrieve the original files." Susan stood beside the table as Claire lowered her voice. "Can you get Robert out?" Nathan hesitated. "Not without knowing who is inside and who is monitoring the roads. Half of my security contracts report through Grant's budget office." Nathan contacted Detective Lisa Monroe, who arranged a patrol check on Susan at the bakery. He then instructed her to meet him at the underground garage beneath Caldwell Tower. Claire disliked the plan, but she feared leaving her father alone more. She drove Susan the 4 miles to the bakery and promised she would return before closing. Susan held Claire's arm before she left. "Your father made terrible choices because he believed fear was the same thing as protection," she said. "Do not make the same mistake." Before Claire stepped outside, Susan fastened Robert's old silver necklace around her neck. She said he had always wanted Claire to keep it safe. Nathan was waiting beside a dark armored sport utility vehicle when Claire arrived at the garage. Nathan handed Claire a plain envelope containing photocopies of the Franklin records. "These are incomplete," she said. "They are supposed to be. Grant will inspect them while we confirm Robert's location. You are not going into that warehouse alone." Claire looked toward the security cameras. "Grant knows I came here." "Most likely." Nathan opened the passenger door. "He also knows the board suspended my authority 30 minutes ago." Claire stopped. "You were suspended?" "Pending an investigation into company funds and the redevelopment vote. Grant planned to remove me before you opened the safe deposit box." As they pulled onto Market Street, Nathan explained that Elias had traced the video through a security consulting firm controlled by Grant. "Why would Grant leave a trail leading back to himself?" Claire asked. "Because he expects to erase it, or because he wants us to think he is the final authority." Nathan drove toward the abandoned industrial district 7 miles south of Center City. Claire held the envelope against her knees. "Tell me the truth about my father." Nathan kept his eyes on the road. "Robert signed a false safety statement, and Grant used it to shield senior management. You hid the original report. I kept a copy, but I did not release it because Robert could have faced charges and your family could have lost its health coverage. Grant promised to restore the settlement funds. Did he restore them? No, then your silence protected him, not us." Nathan accepted the accusation without defending himself. "Yes." That single word carried more weight than another explanation. Nathan's guilt came from believing he could control the consequences afterward. His authority had allowed delay to become complicity. The vehicle entered a lower parking structure 2 blocks from Franklin, where they planned to continue on foot. A steel barrier dropped behind them, the dashboard went black, and the armored vehicle's secondary locks engaged. A water-based fire suppression system released white mist that drifted through the vents. Claire reached for her phone. The battery showed 3%. "What is happening?" "Someone triggered the building controls and sent a malicious command to the vehicle's security system," Nathan said. "He tried the normal release, but the passenger lock remained sealed." "Can they drive it?" "No, but they can keep us inside." Nathan used a mechanical override beneath the driver's seat. He told Claire to remain inside while he reset the garage controls. "You are leaving me here. The mist is water-based, but your door requires an external reset. You expect me to trust that?" Nathan met her eyes. "No. I expect you to watch what I do." He stepped into the garage and crossed to a red emergency control cabinet near a concrete utility door about 20 feet away. Claire saw him remove an emergency transmitter. Beyond the reinforced glass, it looked as though he were holding a remote while she remained trapped inside his car. "I trusted you," she shouted, though the glass swallowed most of her voice. Nathan looked toward the ceiling, raised the transmitter, and pressed the button. A white emergency strobe filled the garage. The reset cut the rogue signal, lifted the barrier, and released the vehicle locks. Nathan returned to her side. "The transmitter reset the garage controls," he said. The apparent betrayal had been an attempt to free her. A signal detector installed by Elias began chirping as the electronics returned. Nathan found one tracker behind a rear tire and a second signal inside Claire's silver necklace. "There is a second transmitter inside the clasp," he said. The necklace had belonged to Robert. The tracker had entered their home long before that morning. Her phone rang with an incoming video call. Robert appeared on the screen, still seated in the Franklin office. Behind him stood a woman in a gray business suit Claire recognized from company reports. Eleanor Whitmore, chairwoman of the Caldwell Urban Board, leaned toward the camera and smiled. "You have been asking the wrong question, Miss Bennett," she said. "Grant did not bury the Franklin truth. He buried it for me." Claire watched Eleanor Whitmore's image vanish and understood that the board chair had never needed Nathan's title. She controlled the directors, the attorneys, and the accounts that had turned injured workers into numbers. "We have to get him out," she said. Nathan examined the small transmitter hidden inside the clasp of her silver necklace. "Eleanor wants us to rush toward Franklin without thinking. Your father may already be somewhere else." Claire removed the necklace and held it between two fingers. "This belonged to him. My mother gave it to me this morning." Elias Reed joined them near the open garage exit and confirmed the signal with his detector. The transmitter was an older model designed to remain dormant until remotely activated. Elias opened the unusually thick clasp and found a narrow plastic strip printed with numbers and letters. Nathan recognized the format as an access code once used for off-site company storage. Claire called Susan from Elias's phone. Her mother said Robert had kept the necklace with his Franklin papers and refused to sell it even when the bakery fell nearly $14,000 behind. "He said Grant could never know he still had it," Susan explained. She searched Robert's desk and found a faded receipt from a self-storage facility near the Philadelphia Navy Yard. Robert had prepaid the unit for 10 years, and the account had remained locked after the payments ended. Claire placed the necklace inside Nathan's disabled vehicle so the tracking signal would remain in the garage. Elias drove them to the storage facility near the Delaware River, where Detective Lisa Monroe met them. After reviewing the video of Robert and the evidence linking the unit to the Franklin records, she had obtained emergency judicial authorization to open it and preserve anything connected to the investigation. The unit contained a metal cabinet and a sealed box bearing Claire's name. Inside was the original Franklin ledger. Page after page documented money removed from the Workers' Settlement Fund and transferred through consulting companies with no offices or employees. The total exceeded $1,800,000. Grant Mercer had signed the payment instructions. Eleanor Whitmore had authorized the receiving companies. Beneath the ledger rested a letter Robert had written 11 years earlier but never delivered. Claire read it in silence. Her father confessed that Grant had ordered him to carry payment records to an outside accounting firm. When Robert recognized the same company names on workers' settlement statements, Grant reminded him that the family depended on company health insurance, Susan's bakery loan, and Claire's college assistance. Robert continued. After the warehouse failure, he signed a false statement claiming the building had passed an internal safety review. Nathan later discovered what Robert had done and offered to help him testify. Robert refused because he believed the truth would cost his family their home and leave Claire without a future. Nathan then hid the original engineering report while attempting to recover the stolen money through private negotiations. Claire lowered the letter and faced him. "You did not protect my father. You protected his silence." Nathan did not look away. "I believed I could force Grant to return the money without exposing Robert." "Did Grant return it?" "No, then your decision protected him and Eleanor." Nathan nodded. "Yes." The admission was quieter than an excuse and more painful than denial. Claire understood Nathan's deepest failure. He had not ordered the cover-up, but he had believed power gave him the right to decide how much truth another family could survive. Robert had made the same mistake. Both men had allowed fear to make decisions for everyone else. While Detective Monroe catalogued the ledger, she received a call from her team. They had located Calvin Price, the former Franklin night supervisor who attended the final safety meeting. Calvin lived at a rehabilitation center in Bala Sinwat. A company attorney had requested his immediate transfer under a Franklin Care contract, but the facility had paused the move for Detective Monroe's welfare interview. Claire, Nathan, Elias, and Detective Monroe reached the center shortly after 3 o'clock. Calvin looked tired, yet his memory was clear. He confirmed that Grant had removed the engineer's report, edited Nathan's recorded statement, and pressured Robert to approve the false inspection. Claire asked who had instructed Grant. Calvin stared toward the doorway before answering. "Eleanor Whitmore." Grant followed her orders because she controlled his promotions and his accounts. Nathan asked whether Calvin would testify before the board. Calvin agreed, but only if Robert stood beside him and admitted his own role. Claire's phone rang from an unknown number. Grant spoke before she could say anything. "Eleanor is taking your father to Caldwell Tower," he said. "She plans to make him confess that Nathan stole the settlement money and forced him to sign the safety report." "Why are you warning me?" Claire asked. "Because I found documents naming me as the only person responsible for every transfer. She is preparing to sacrifice me." Grant explained that the board vote would begin at 4:30. If Eleanor gained permanent control, she would approve the redevelopment valued at $640 million, remove Nathan, and bury the Franklin records behind privilege claims. "Where is my father now?" Claire asked. "On his way to the 62nd floor." Claire checked the time. It was 3:52. Detective Monroe requested an emergency escort into Center City. They had 38 minutes to reach Caldwell Tower, present the ledger, protect Robert, and convince a room full of powerful people that the woman leading them had built her authority on 12 years of purchased silence. Claire reached Caldwell Tower with 12 minutes left before the board vote, carrying the ledger that could save her father and expose the people controlling the room. Detective Monroe and 2 federal agents escorted Claire through a secured elevator. Nathan, Elias, and Calvin Price followed. The boardroom doors were already closed. Through the glass, Claire saw Eleanor at the head of the table, Grant beside her, and Robert near the far wall. Nathan's nameplate had been removed. Detective Monroe presented her credentials, and security opened the doors. "Do not vote," she said. Every face turned toward her. Eleanor did not appear surprised. "Miss Bennett no longer works for this company," she said. "She has no authority here." Claire placed the sealed evidence bag containing the original Franklin ledger on the table. "Neither did you, when you transferred $1,800,000 from injured workers into companies you controlled." The room went silent. Robert looked at Claire with fear and relief. Eleanor folded her hands. "That document has no verified chain of custody." Grant stared at the ledger. He was no longer afraid of Nathan. He was afraid of Eleanor. Claire looked at him. "Tell them who approved the transfers." Grant remained silent. Eleanor turned to the board. "This is an emotional distraction created by a former employee under federal review." Claire took out Robert's letter. My father admitted his role 11 years ago. He signed a false safety statement because Grant threatened his health insurance, his job, and our home. Nathan hid the original report because he believed he could repair the damage privately. Every person involved chose silence. Eleanor built her power on that silence. Nathan entered behind her. Board members began speaking until Eleanor raised one hand. Nathan Caldwell is suspended, she said. He is not permitted to address the board. Nathan stopped beside Claire. Then I will address the people who will investigate the board. The federal agents entered beside Detective Monroe. Because the shell companies were part of an active public corruption inquiry, prosecutors had secured a preservation warrant and a temporary order blocking redevelopment transfers. Eleanor's expression shifted from confidence to calculation. You have a ledger and a frightened family, she said. That does not prove I ordered anything. Calvin Price appeared beside Elias. His voice was weak, yet every word reached the table. You told Grant to remove the inspection report. Eleanor stared at him. Calvin continued. You told him Nathan's recording could be edited. You told Robert the workers would lose insurance if the warehouse closed. I heard the call. Grant pushed back his chair. That is not enough. Claire turned toward him. Then help make it enough. Eleanor gave him a warning glance. Grant looked from Eleanor to the agents. He had survived by standing near the strongest person in the room, but now she had prepared to sacrifice him. He opened a folder of signed memoranda. She authorized the consulting companies, he said. Eleanor's voice remained cold. Be careful, Grant. You told me the money would be returned before the settlements were audited. You approved every transfer. Because you said Nathan's father wanted it done. And you believed me. Grant looked at the board members who had once treated him as untouchable. No. I wanted to believe you because it made me richer. His confession did not excuse him, but it ended Eleanor's control of the story. The agents instructed both executives to remain while the records were secured. The danger ended through signatures, testimony, and powerful people discovering that titles could no longer protect them. Robert stood slowly. Claire crossed the room and stopped in front of him. I am sorry, he said. I thought keeping quiet would keep you safe. It kept me uninformed, Claire replied. That is not the same thing. Robert lowered his eyes. I know. He agreed to give a complete statement and accept responsibility for the false safety report. Claire did not promise forgiveness. She took his hand and walked with him from the boardroom. The redevelopment vote was cancelled. The city suspended the acquisition plan, and the Bennett home was removed from the property list. Within weeks, the company and city announced a proposed $28 million restitution fund, subject to judicial review. It could not erase 12 years of pain, but it acknowledged the loss. Nathan resigned as chief executive officer before the board could reinstate him. In a public statement, he admitted hiding evidence and using private agreements to control a truth that never belonged to him. Claire also resigned. She did not want her old position restored. With support from Detective Monroe and several community attorneys, she began helping families challenge unfair property acquisitions across Philadelphia. Robert entered a legal cooperation agreement and started physical therapy again. Susan kept the bakery, and Detective Monroe cataloged the silver necklace as evidence. 6 months later, Nathan came to the Bennett home alone. No driver or security team waited nearby. He stood on the porch holding the faded photograph of Robert, Grant, and himself outside Franklin Freight Depot. Claire opened the door but did not invite him inside. I thought your father should have this back, Nathan said. Claire accepted the photograph. He spent years hiding it. So did I. Nathan looked toward the row of houses that his company had nearly erased. I wanted to ask whether you can forgive me. Claire studied him. Without the office and boardroom, he looked smaller. I believe you tried to protect my family, she said. I also believe you decided for us what truth we could survive. That was never your right. Nathan nodded. No, it was not. Forgiveness is not pretending the past did not happen. I understand. Claire closed the door gently. That evening, she turned the photograph over and saw a new line written beneath the old message. Franklin was only the first. Inside the envelope was a recent photograph of Nathan standing outside another abandoned warehouse in Baltimore. Behind him, painted on a loading door, was the name of a company connected to Eleanor's missing accounts. Claire looked at the date. It had been taken 3 days earlier. The Franklin truth had survived, but somewhere beyond Philadelphia, another family was still living inside the lie.